Studies program here at Lewis and Clark. I am the instructor of record for two sections of Lewis and Clark College's first-year seminar called Numbers that make up the Take Charge group. These two sections were modeled on a class called Solving Complex Problems that is part of MIT's first-year learning community called Terrascope. The premise of this class is that first-year students can and should start tackling the problems that matter to them, not just at the end of their college careers, but now, at the beginning. The students were presented with an unsolved and difficult problem at the outset, and their job over the course of the semester was to develop a proposal for addressing it, which they will share with you tonight. What makes this class really different from others is that the students were almost wholly in charge of this process by which they tackled the problem. They had very little guidance from me. Ask them about it. They had to figure out not only how to break down and make progress on a gnarly problem, but how to organize themselves and their work, wrangling not just one, but two large groups. The ownership that they had over that whole process gave them an authentic experience with the challenges of real-world problem solving, with all the attendant trade-offs, ambiguities, constraints, and interpersonal dynamics. They drew on support from some key resources in the Lewis and Clark community and beyond, including a cadre of a couple dozen alumni mentors who provided lots of substantive feedback on progress updates and draft outcomes, at least one of whom is in the room and some of whom may be online. Sophomore environmental studies major, Lucas Hausman, who was the teaching assistant for this class. Writing Center peer tutors who gave helpful suggestions during presentation preparation and masterful advice about the content of a website that the students developed detailing their solutions. And Terrascope veterans Lucy Gray, an undergraduate teaching fellow at MIT, and Ari Epstein, the associate director of Terrascope, both of whom gave really valuable direct feedback to the students in the final stages of their work. I am also deeply indebted to Ari personally for his generous guidance and support throughout this process, which was a huge learning experience for me as well as for the students. And I also want to thank and introduce our esteemed panel of experts who have so graciously agreed to join us tonight to respond to the students' work. So the students will give their presentation, and after a short break, we'll have an extended Q&A session during which the students will first take questions from the panelists and then from the audience. Joining us tonight are the following. Josh Walter is a sixth-generation Oregonian who has served as the Vice President for Advancement at Lewis and Clark College since 2016. In this role, he leads the college's development and alumni engagement efforts, recently overseeing the most ambitious fundraising campaign in the institution's history, which exceeded its $155 million goal. Before joining Lewis and Clark, Josh built a distinguished career in higher education advancement at Claremont McKenna College, where he played a key role in their record-breaking $635 million campaign. A former student athlete and U.S. Army officer, he brings a leadership style rooted in community building and a deep personal commitment to the transformative power of a liberal arts education. Sarah Goforth works for the Portland Bureau of Transportation as a project manager of two programs, The first is the Transportation Wallet in parking districts, a program that leverages parking permit surcharge fees to offset the cost of a multimodal transportation benefit package. The program is a parking and transportation demand management strategy wrapped into one. Secondly, Sarah works as the bike parking project manager for PBOT, which involves planning and managing the placement of bike racks and bike corrals in the public right-of-way, as well as working with Biketown staff on station siting for shared e-bikes and e-scooters. She's been with PBOT for over 12 years. Carissa Nickerson has worked in transportation and parking at Portland Community College for over 30 years, starting out in parking enforcement when the department was just getting off the ground in 1994. She has worked on everything from campus shuttles and alternative transportation programs to parking operations and neighborhood partnerships. For the past 12 years, she has managed parking services, supporting the teams and systems that keep campus moving day to day. The most rewarding part of her career has been seeing how the transportation world has evolved while mentoring and learning from the students she's worked with along the way. Ted Leibold has more than 30 years of professional transportation planning and programming experience, working to bring a safer and more equitable transportation system to the greater Portland metropolitan area. As Transportation Policy Director for Metro, he provides strategic leadership on regional transportation policy and funding topics to staff and policy boards and ensures compliance with federal transportation planning regulations for the metropolitan region. Ted is also a Lewis and Clark alum from the class of 1987 with a double major in political science and in business and administrative studies. And finally, Maura Paxton is a planner at Alta Planning and Design, a planning agency that works to create sustainable communities with a long history of work in active transportation. And it should be noted that both Maura and Sarah rode their bikes here today. She primarily works on safe routes to school and transportation options projects, which both focus on getting people walking, rolling, or taking transit where they need to be safely. She has a Master's of Urban and Regional Planning from Portland State University. But tonight is really about the students, and so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Nadine, who will start the presentation.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is Nadine, and welcome to our presentation, Take Charge, Tackling Environmental Problems at Lewis and Clark College. By the end of this presentation, you will hopefully have a comprehensive understanding of what 39 students have been working on throughout the past semester. We worked on this to try to help solve the overlapping transportation issues at our school. Just a brief table of contents to go over what we'll talk about during this presentation. We'll go over the context of public transportation and transportation at our school, narrowing the problem down, and the solutions and proposals we came up with. For the context part of this presentation, I'll go over the history of transportation at Lewis and Clark, key terms, our 3 campuses, what Group A and Group B entails, our mission, overarching issues, and shared information. So a little bit more about us. The purpose of our semester's work was to develop a comprehensive, cost-effective, and environmentally friendly transportation proposal that would help tackle the current trends in our school's transportation system. This includes fighting single occupancy vehicle use, getting back on track to reduce carbon emissions, and pushing for greater LC integration in the Portland metropolitan area. This problem was investigated by 2 distinct sections, Group A and Group B, of the same core class, which represent the morning and afternoon sections of the same class. Each is pursuing the same research objectives. Our teams collaborated extensively, exchanging data sets, frameworks of our methods, and supporting materials to ensure a cohesive and rigorous project. Lewis and Clark functions as a node within Portland's complex transportation system, yet its links to the system remain fragile and honestly incomplete. Travel to and from this hilly and somewhat isolated part of the city involves individual vehicle use. This is inequitable for people who cannot afford cars, conflicts with the campuses and the city's carbon emission goals, creates parking problems, and obstructs LC's goals of greater integration with the city. There are many other such urban islands throughout the country where inadequate transportation systems hamper residents' and students' daily lives. Now I will go over some key terms that we would like you to understand for this presentation. So NSO means New Student Orientation. The Otter Bus, formerly known as the PIO, is LC's personal outsourced school bus from Eco Shuttle that takes students, staff, and faculty to key parts of Portland. That includes Fred Meyer, Settlewood, Southwest Downtown Portland, and more. Two groups will also be mentioned throughout this presentation, as I mentioned before, Group A and B, which are the morning and afternoon sections of the same first-year seminar class. Throughout the course of this presentation, we also reference two surveys, one of which our students made and curated and sent out, and the other one is the school's official transportation survey that was sent out by our transportation and parking department. We also reference Helen Trajic's undergrad thesis that was published in 2023 and possesses valued information that we use throughout our research. Helen, an environmental studies major and Lewis and Clark alum, produced a comprehensive analysis that continues to inform sustainability discussions on campus, making her work an important foundation for our research. Thank you so much for being here, by the way.
Okay, hello, I'm Zoe, and I'm going to be talking a little bit about our campuses and just Lewis and Clark community. So if you didn't know, Lewis and Clark has 3 campuses. We have a graduate campus, an undergraduate campus, and a law campus. So when going through our process into solving these problems, we had to include all 3 campuses in our problems and solving them. The only challenge that we really had with this was that we had a lack of connection with the graduate campus and the law campus, so some of our data is a little bit skewed just to the undergraduate campus. But we still wanted to include them in our surveys.
Hello, my name is Kaylee, and I'm a student from Group B. So for some additional context, as it's been said, we are in 2 distinct groups, Groups A, which met in the morning, and Group B, which met in the afternoon. And because we met at different times, we came to 2 unique but very similar solutions. To account for our differences, slides designed by or containing information from a specific group will be labeled with their respective letters.
So this is our mission: sustainability, affordability, accessibility, and unity. The Lewis and Clark community is committed to social justice and developing a more equitable community for all. In LC's website, their mission statement says, quote, "We are guided by a commitment to diversity, equity, sustainability, global mindedness, and the pursuit of a more just society," end quote. Naturally, environmental justice is no exception to those core values. Therefore, our mission as a class of first-year students was to revise the current system of transportation to make sure it's convenient and comfortable for all of our LC community, which includes staff, faculty, and students. It goes without saying that we also wanted to emphasize sustainability and affordability during our process. We live in a city, so transportation and public transportation should be embraced and supported. It's a benefit many overlook for a personal car, but in reality, it allows for connection and unity among people. The more public transportation is used and supported, the more budget and access it will be given. We care about our community, we care about our earth, and we want to make a change for the better. For example, Lewis and Clark states in their website, once again, that they have an ambitious goal of eliminating greenhouse gases completely by 2040, and this pushes us to directly confront our problems with sustainability. Next, I will be going over some overarching issues that we tackled during our semester. First, I will be going over isolation, car dependence, and then lastly, I will be going over reliability. First, some isolation context. We live in a suburb, and we live in a neighborhood called Collinsview on top of Palatine Hill. This is all geographically isolated from downtown Southwest Portland and Northeast Portland as well. It is really hilly, so it's sort of a deterrent for people to bike to and from campus, and also it limits our access to the TriMet routes, as we only have one really near us by the law campus. As you were probably coming up here and commuting, you probably noticed the stark difference between a downtown and then going into the suburbs. Although we're only 6 miles away from downtown Portland, Southwest Portland, you can tell that it becomes sort of an island. There's a lot of forestry around, there's a lot of hills, and it just blocks us off because we are in a suburb, we are in a residential area, and that just causes some contention for us, especially because Lewis and Clark wants to focus on creating a boundary from our college and the residents. So we don't want to create too much traffic, we don't want to create too much car pollution around where the residents are. Going from that, car dependence. This graphic is from Helen Trazick's thesis, and this graphic is displaying the question, what types of mode of transportation are you using during the week? We can see in this bolded section over here that drove alone was the highest amount of people and the highest amount of people in our graphic here. So that's just showing us that driving alone, once again, is just the dependency on it. It's more convenient. It's something that people go to immediately. Furthermore, we're seeing from the TDM management plan that in 2020, in comparison to 2020 and 2025, this plan was made by Lewis and Clark, and we can see on the right that the 2020 management plan for driving alone, it has 40% of the people of the weekly trips. And in comparison to 2025, we see that it's a 14% increase of driving alone, and that includes employees and students. Next, I'm going to talk about reliability of the TriMet and the OtterBus. So in the parts that I bolded here in this graphic from the core survey that we sent out this semester, reliability and timing were the two highest percentages of why riding the TriMet and the OtterBus might be a deterrent, and some concerns that they have over that. Because there are delays, there are maybe leaving early, the timing is just not convenient for a lot of people, and there's inconsistencies that happen that deter people from using the TriMet and the OtterBus, and therefore want to use a personal car instead.
Okay, so now I would just like to briefly go over 4 key pieces of data we used when confronting our problem that we've mentioned before and that we'll continue mentioning in our presentation. So the first one we accessed was Lewis and Clark's most recent annual transportation survey from 2025. This survey gave us good metrics to analyze our problem, and it provided general information through some standard questions. Secondly, we looked at Helen Trazick's thesis, which we've mentioned. We also looked at the Lewis and Clark 2023 STARS report. STARS stands for Sustainability Tracking, Assessment, and Rating System. This is a public database that all colleges have the ability to submit data to, and it acts as a self-reporting system to show sustainability performance. The system included a close inspection of our commuting options and campus emissions. On this report, we got a score of 70.2, or a gold score, which is the second highest score available next to a platinum score. Next, we designed our own survey this year. We shared our survey with students, both on and off campus, as well as staff and faculty, and we got 138 total responses. 42% of those responses were from on-campus students, 29.8% were from staff, 19.1% were from faculty, and the minority of respondents, with 9.2%, were off-campus students. We did this to gain a holistic understanding of the needs of each member of our school's community. For example, many faculty members described in their responses having to drive a child to and from a child care center while also having to drive themselves to work, showing that a situation like theirs might cause them to rely more heavily on single occupancy vehicles for efficiency. While on the other hand, most students only have to drive themselves on a consistent basis to and from school. The reason we designed our own survey rather than relying solely on our previously curated data was so that we can ask questions that related to particular aspects of our draft solution. Based on the responses to these questions, we would know whether our ideas needed expanding and tweaking or if they were supported by the data.
Hello, my name is Dana Lund, and I'm a first-year student here at Lewis & Clark, and I was a part of Group B. I'm going to be talking a little bit about how we narrowed in on which problems we wanted to focus on solving. We did this using the 5 steps shown here, which were discover current issues, identify largest issues, imagine a successful future, rule out unrealistic goals, and develop a problem statement. For our first step, discovering current issues, we spoke to 6 different groups of people, which included freshmen, upperclassmen, staff and faculty, Otter bus drivers, the transportation department, and the sustainability department. We got their input on what they presumed to be the current issues with the Lewis & Clark transportation system. I will briefly highlight the biggest issues that each group identified. Freshmen aren't allowed to have cars on campus, and so they heavily favor rideshare apps. Freshmen tend to favor rideshare apps over mass transit options because mass transit is very time-consuming. TriMet can be confusing to understand, especially for first-year students who may not have a lot of experience using public transportation. And the Otter bus doesn't offer a ton of destinations. The general consensus of upperclassmen was that they use mass transportation less than once a week and heavily favor carpooling. They said that they found carpooling easier due to the inconsistency of mass transportation options. They also expressed concerns with limited parking and heavy traffic to campus in the mornings. Staff and faculty rely heavily on personal single-occupancy vehicles due to time concerns and low frequency of mass transportation. It was also noted that many of the staff do not live along the Otter bus route. Many people on the staff mentioned that biking was an underutilized method of transportation for the Lewis & Clark community. The Otter bus drivers expressed interest in prioritizing timing and accessibility for students, but believe that this raises a concern because increasing frequency and lowering ride times would mean shortening routes, and then that would cause there to be fewer destinations. The transportation department shared the current constraints we have with making improvements. They shared that 2/3 of the transportation budget, or $430,000 per year, is being used on the Otter bus, and that adding a second one would raise that cost to around $800,000 a year, which would exceed our budget. They expressed that any sort of expansions would be difficult due to the costs involved and working with an outside company, EcoShuttle. They also stated that TriMet is currently in debt and therefore also unable to make these large changes. The last thing they expressed was that there is currently not much incentive to use the Otter bus. The sustainability department echoed that people are not very incentivized to use mass transportation, and they pointed out that even energy-saving or electric vehicles are unsustainable if not enough people are using them. This highlights the need to increase ridership and incentive. Other issues they identified is the absence of e-bike charging on campus, failed past attempts at carpool apps, and the shutdown of the bike rental program due to the pandemic. Using this information that we gathered from the 6 groups, we narrowed in on what we believe to be the biggest issues. The biggest 2 issues that we identified were the heavy reliance on cars, which is an issue because cars are expensive, not an option for first-year students, bad for the environment, and lead to parking problems. The other main issue we identified was the underutilization of mass transportation due to time concerns, limited destinations, and safety concerns. In order to figure out what the problem is, we wanted to imagine a future in which this problem had already been solved. We decided that a successful transportation system would be used by a diverse population, offer access to a variety of locations, and be safe, accessible, multimodal, and widely known. The next thing we had to do was rule out goals that would be unrealistic at this time. We realized that we wouldn't be able to make large changes to the Otter bus due to it being run by an outside company and the costs that would come with changing it. We briefly considered an idea of adding a second Otter bus, but ultimately ruled it out due to budget constraints. We also realized that we wouldn't be able to make changes to TriMet due to the debt that they are currently in. Lastly, we realized that although parking is a big issue, we aren't able to add any more parking spaces because Lewis & Clark already has the maximum amount due to city environmental standards. Using all of the information we gathered, it led us to our last step, which was developing a problem statement. We focused on the issues that we hadn't ruled out and developed a problem statement in the form of a research question, which I will read to you now. How do we improve and incentivize current systems, such as the OtterBus, TriMet, and carpooling, to make them more appealing than single-occupancy vehicles? This was the question that guided the rest of our research and led to our proposed solutions.
Okay, hello. Let's get into some problem solving. My name is Sydney Shiner.
And my name is Maya Connolly.
We are both from Group A, and throughout the course, we focused a lot on TriMet integration and improving the OtterBus. So one of our biggest questions was, how are we going to get more people riding the OtterBus? We propose altering the OtterBus schedule to include stops in Hillsdale and Westmoreland. This will help us broaden regional access, provide more direct availability to the Sellwood and Moreland area, which is very popular for students, and maximize the overall efficiency of our schedule. With this, we also hope to publicize the OtterBus's GTFS data to connect to Google Maps, Apple Maps, and any other transit apps. GTFS, for those that don't know, I didn't know before this class, stands for General Transit Feed Specification. This is pretty much how transportation agencies share their schedules, stop locations, and routes. Doing this will make finding and planning routes much more convenient and accessible to the LC community. I know me personally, or with all my friends, whenever we have to go somewhere and use both apps, it gets really confusing and annoying, and you just have to plan your own route. So we're really hoping if we can connect the two and make it a little more convenient, we can increase ridership.
Pictured here is a visual representation of our proposal, with the new OtterBus route highlighted in orange in the center. The new route would offer access to 8 different transit centers around the Portland metropolitan area, with 6 route connections that run every half hour and 5 additional connections that run during peak service. The most frequent are listed on the slide, being routes 12, routes 54, and the MAX orange and yellow line light rail. This map may look unfamiliar to you, and that's because it incorporates service changes to the TriMet that were approved just earlier today that are set to go into effect in August of this year.
All right, excuse me. With this improvement, we also propose the installation of bus shelters at both the northbound and southbound LC Law campus bus stops. This is a crucial part to any bus stop to provide more comfort and access to travelers. It'll shelter passengers from the elements like the Oregon rain, offer a place to sit for anyone, but especially those that need it, and maintain a clean surrounding area with a garbage can. Again, as someone that travels a lot, having to walk down to the bus stop to take the TriMet, not have anywhere to sit, and be stuck in the rain isn't very appealing to me or a lot of students. So again, we really trust that adding these will help increase ridership and get more people taking the bus. Thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Sophia.
And I'm Phoebe.
And we are part of Group B, and we're going to talk about one of the solutions, that it's the app. First, I'm going to start about what's the problem. And you may be thinking, what's the problem with the OtterBus app right now? So the OtterBus app right now is really problematic. The 2 core features of the app are to help students locate the shuttle and predict what time it will arrive at each stop. But the app currently cannot carry out this task efficiently. It fails to show the shuttle's location in real-life time and to notify users about delays. Students cannot rely on it to plan their trips, and many students choose not to use the app because of its deficient features and UI. Therefore, improvements are needed to make the app more accurate for the students. So Group B decided to create a mock-up of what we would love the app to look like. First, we have the loading page, and in the other images, we can see net stop updates, bus stops, home, bus, where the bus is gonna be, your location, and the bus locations. For the other extra option at the bottom, these were something that we create in the early stage of the mockup. They may not necessarily be needed right now, but it's good to have these options.
Okay, and then for the app concept, there will be real-time shuttle tracking. So there'll be an icon on the map showing where the shuttle is at that exact moment. There'll be accurate time estimates. So somewhere within the app, it'll show you an estimated time of arrival for the bus. And there'll be instant delay notifications, so you'll be notified by the app right away if a delay has occurred. The app will be modern and user-friendly, so it will be clean and easy to navigate. And this app as a solution, so the purpose of the app is to improve transportation reliability and make off-campus navigation easier. The impact would be to increase the OtterBus use, reduce reliance on personal vehicles, and expand transportation access. The feasibility, it is designed as a pilot mobility solution here at Lewis and Clark. It will build on the existing shuttle system, making it better, and it will be supported by external funding opportunities. The next steps for this app is to develop a working prototype, pilot test it with students, and secure funding and begin development. For the budget and funding, so the total projected cost is $50,000 to $100,000. While this is a lot, it covers development, design, and implementation of the app. The current financial context, here at Lewis and Clark, we are actively working to balance its budget. So there is a budget, but it's pretty small. We have limited capacity for large new internal investments, and it makes full institutional funding unlikely in the short term. So our funding strategy. We want to consider prioritizing external funding to help reduce the financial burden on the college with two potential approaches. The primary approach will be grant writing, and the secondary approach will be fundraising campaigns. For the grant funding approach, it may be beneficial to pursue one major grant rather than multiple smaller ones. This approach could be more efficient and realistic for covering full project costs, and securing a larger grant may allow for a faster rollout. So overall, while upfront costs are significant, external funding makes the project financially achievable, and a strong alignment with state transportation goals strengthens the likelihood of funding success.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jackie Watt, and I'm from Group B.
I'm Kyra, I'm from Group A.
We want to talk about education as one of the parts of our solution that both groups came to. So first of all, to identify some of the current issues with the education system, we noticed that students coming into Lewis and Clark have varied levels of experience. So that means that some students grew up in areas where they utilized mass transportation a lot, and so now they feel very comfortable using what's available here. However, other students have no experience, and so this feels very foreign to them and causes some fear. Freshmen are not allowed to have cars, so that limits their freedom and forces them to rely on these transportation methods that maybe they don't know how to use. New student peer mentors, which is part of orientation, is one of the main ways for students to get information. However, their mentors are not required to share information about transportation, and so this information is very unstandardized and leads to different playing fields for each student. We talked to Melanie McManaman, who is the first-year experience coordinator, and she told us that one of the issues she notices a lot with students is that they're very afraid of making mistakes, and so they don't take the risks to try out these methods of transportation.
All right. Something that we found interesting when researching this topic in Group A was that Lewis and Clark and the Greater Portland area already offer many resources to students, such as previously talked about the OtterBus shuttle. We also have a student-run bike co-op here on campus. They offer free repairs, many cycling activities, and they also have free-of-cost bikes for students to borrow. All students need to do is fill out a form, and it's completely free of cost for them to rent these bikes. Lewis and Clark is also partnered with Zipcar. Zipcar offers rental cars for students at the cost of $75 a day. When we were researching this, one of the key resources that we used was, again, Helen Trasik's thesis on this topic, and she wrote that many students are unaware of these resources that exist. We understood this especially as first-year students because this was something that we were experiencing as well. So we decided to investigate it further. We again looked at the 2025 transportation survey that was sent out, and we saw that the usage for the Otterbus shuttle was very low, especially for students. So when we wrote the 2026 Core 121 survey, and we sent it out, we asked students if the Otterbus shuttle was more thoroughly taught about during NSO or new student orientation week, if they believed they would use it more often. And 50% of respondents said they did believe they would use it more often. This brought us to focus on education as one of our solutions. So the first thing that we did was create a pamphlet. We knew that our pamphlet needed to be visually appealing and also very easy to understand, especially for students who aren't familiar with these resources already. On the pamphlet, we created many resources. We gave them links, or we gave students links to where to find discounted passes for TriMet, information about apps useful for navigation, as well as resources such as biking, carpool services, parking passes, and so on. This is only half of the pamphlet. The LC shuttle, or the Otterbus shuttle, is also on the second half of it as well. We figured that we would send out QR codes during NSO week, and these QR codes could be on slideshows that NSPMs present. That way, paper waste is not necessary for students to gain access to these pamphlets. We decided that the pamphlet would be available on the Otterbus website, which we also wanted to improve. The current state of the website is that we have many broken links and a broken tracker as well. Both of these have been directly acknowledged by the head of transportation, as well as on the website, there is no information about transferring from the Otterbus to TriMet. Our idea for an improved website would include a map of TriMet transfers. When you click on the map, it'll show you a list of what TriMet buses and maxes are nearby, that stop, as well as information about the Portland neighborhood that you are in, what's nearby, and then what the neighborhood is known for. This would make it more convenient for students who know about TriMet already or know about the Portland area already, because they're no longer having to transfer between different apps and the website in order to plan their own route. But it would also make it very easy for students who aren't as familiar with this as well, because all the information would be laid out right there.
All right, so currently new student orientation is really important to Lewis and Clark, also called NSO. This is one of the ways that new students learn all about Lewis and Clark, and that includes the transportation options that we have. So new student peer mentors, or NSPMs, are assigned to a group of about 10 students during the first week and the first semester of their fall semester. So these new student peer mentors are not obligated to share information about transportation. It's not standardized. And so what we want to do is make sure that they do have things that they need to tell their students so that everyone can have the same background knowledge. So this can include how to get hop cards, how expensive they are, where stops are located on the Otterbus, and how you can connect to the TriMet, how to pull the cord on the Otterbus, which is something that many students are unsure about, and information about the bike co-op and carpooling for Lewis and Clark. Another really important part of NSO is off-campus experiences, and these take place over the course of the whole first semester. So each mentor takes their group of students on one off-campus activity, and they use either the Otterbus or public transportation. However, the problem with this current system is that each mentor has one activity, and if their students in their group cannot attend, then they don't get to go. So we talked with Melanie McManaman, and she has a new system going in place next year where there will be a whole list of all of the off-campus activities that each mentor is hosting, and then students will sign up for the one that fits their schedule. So this will improve access for students to be able to go to one or multiple that fit their schedule. We also proposed a pamphlet for Group B, and our pamphlet would be distributed in new student orientation packets so that students can have this information physically and not have to remember it all during the busy first week of school. It has information about, again, hop cards, the Otterbus schedule, and bikes and carpooling. And we also have some QR codes and links so that all of the information is not overwhelming on the pamphlet and students can get more information depending on what they're looking for. And then the other side here on the right, we have a flyer, and this is a proposed solution for how we can spread information to people all across the Lewis and Clark community, and that includes not just first-year students, but also staff, faculty, and students across multiple campuses. By putting up flyers, this information becomes more accessible because you see it when you're walking around campus. And we have one about the new Otterbus route, but really the flyers could be used to share any kind of new information that pertains to transportation. We propose to make other resources better, such as improving the website, fixing broken links, and creating videos that show exactly how the Otterbus stops work and what it looks like, so that students who are getting on for the first time have an idea of what to expect and what the stop will look like. Lastly, the outcomes of improving the education system means that this information is more accessible to students. This could be through physical media that they get, through seeing how their new student peer mentor navigates the system, and all of the different resources we've discussed. For freshman students specifically, this increases their freedom because they don't have the option to use a single occupancy vehicle, and it will reduce their stress and fear. Lastly, this will increase efficiency for public transportation and for the Otterbus because when more people are using it, it becomes more efficient and more sustainable. If nobody is riding on the Otterbus, then it's not efficient because we're wasting that energy. And if more people use it, there will be fewer parking problems on campus due to less cars physically driving around.
Hi, my name is Ayla. I'm a representative from Group B.
Good evening. My name is Ellen. I'm a representative from Group A. We're going to get into both our groups came to a solution of carpooling, but we both have separate approaches of how we came to the solution. So we're going to talk about that. And we're also going to get into some general context about carpooling. So as mentioned, Lewis and Clark has reached its limit legally allowed on parking space on campus by the TDM, Transportation Demand Management Plan. We currently have 1,457 parking spaces on campus. Of those, 31 must be and are reserved for carpooling. And this is across all 3 campuses, so law and grad included. Only 5% of the carpooling is utilized by on-campus community. In the 2024-2025 academic year, 118 permits were sold, and this year, the 2025-2026 academic year, only 68 were sold, so that's nearly half as many. This highlights the importance for education about carpooling. According to the head of transportation department, 10 to 15% of carpooling spaces are used inappropriately, meaning that people park there who don't have carpooling passes, or they have carpooling passes but they drive solo. I don't know how they calculated this, but I think it's a lot more than that because every time I come and the parking lot is full, all the carpooling spots are occupied. 24% of on-campus students and 70% of commuting community require a parking spot on campus. To fulfill this demand, we would need 1,645 single occupancy vehicle parking spots on campus. This is just not possible due to the limitations on parking and the need for carpooling parking spots on campus.
Next, I'll be talking about the carpooling permit system at Lewis and Clark College, and currently the college does offer a carpooling permit at a discounted rate, it is $180 per semester compared to the normal permit, which is $195 per semester. These parking permits grant special access to parking spots around campus, like mentioned earlier, that are carpool only. However, as Ellen mentioned earlier, 10 to 15% of these spots are used inappropriately by people who either drive solo or don't have any passengers with them. This loses the incentive for students and faculty members to carpool, as the spots are not guaranteed. There's also a carpooling spreadsheet that has been created by ASB for faculty members who commute, and this way faculty members can sign up and provide a offer for carpooling. However, this current system only targets commuters and does not incorporate any students, especially the freshmen who are not allowed to have a single occupancy vehicle on campus. Up above, I have a pie chart of the 2026 survey that our core class has sent out, and it did report that 47.1% of students would be more likely to carpool if there were a matching system to go along with it. Given this information, Group B came up with a cheap and usable solution, and up here I have it. It is a Google spreadsheet which can be only accessed by those with a Lewis and Clark College email. As you can see on the very left, we have some personal contact information that includes either the email or phone number of the driver. Following that is some of the location information as well as departure times and the location that the driver is going to. And on the far right, we have the number of seats available, and that way passengers can sort of sign up for where they want to put their name, and if they desire to go to that location, they can contact the driver with the information on the left. This serves as just a prototype for what we hope to expand after advertising and education. We would hopefully like to eliminate the need for certain rideshare apps, and we could possibly integrate this into one of the app icons in the app mentioned previously.
Okay, so for Group A's solution, we came to the website. As mentioned before, you will be able to access the pamphlet on the website as well as OtterBus TriMet Hub's transfer info. Our goal is also to have a carpooling service for connecting, a carpooling connection service connecting carpooling seekers to carpooling drivers. This will include an algorithm for route matching, as well as sharing modes of communication, mainly through phone numbers or email. To create this, we will create zip codes or locations or location groups so that carpool seekers can find carpool providers and contact them. This brings me to the budgeting part of this. As mentioned, the current website is not working, has a lot of issues, and needs to be updated. So our solution was to update the current website, and funding for this would need to be outsourced. Transportation, it could be outsourced through the current transportation app, and relocated towards this. This solution will bring awareness and convenience to carpooling and will also meet the Lewis and Clark's goals to reduce the single occupancy vehicles rate to under 40%. Currently, it is as of 2023, it stands around 70%. And it will also meet the schools and the city's gas emission goals. Thank you.
All right. My name is Slade, and I'm here to wrap it up. So the main problems that we saw in making our solutions were issues with lack of time, accessibility, and of knowledge. Although we had slightly different solutions, we both agreed on some main actions that could solve these common problems in order to help our community. Our shared solution focuses on education and technological innovation. In educating the population, we hope to increase ridership of the Otterbus and other multi-occupancy vehicles, away from single-occupancy vehicles. We hope to improve usage of public transportation. And in terms of technological innovation, we both believe that changes in the technology currently used could help solve our issues. For example, by revamping and updating the Otterbus, or by creating a new website to better suit our community. Lewis and Clark shows how transportation in Portland can be unequal. There are things that we can't change, like the isolation of our school and our geographical limitations. But there are things that we can do to fill in gaps of infrastructure struggles. Our issues with transportation at Lewis and Clark is just a common example, which shows the many issues that urban, suburban, and peri-urban spaces face. So in conclusion, by stepping up to take on this challenging problem, our class has deeply thought about and thought through the transportation and accessibility issues that we face in our community. We worked together over different class periods, communicating over Discord and meeting in the library whenever we could, and we managed to conduct extensive research, community outreach, and analysis in order to develop our proposed solutions. We hope that you all listening take our process and our solutions to heart and take these ideas back to your own communities, or to start change here at Lewis and Clark. We are one step closer to improving our space using environmentally friendly advancements, adapting to the new technology and science that the world has offered. I believe that our class has started a change and that we can put these solutions in place. Thank you so much for listening to our presentation.
Good evening. Thank you once again to our amazing presentation team. Thank you all so much for your time and attention this evening. My name is Laura Malone. I will be one of our moderators this evening from the afternoon section. I'm here to let you know that we will now have a brief intermission, so feel free to stretch your legs, have a chat, and we'll let you know when to come back in around 5 minutes. Thank you.
Way I'm close to Laura.
So it's ultimately our decision.
Okay, let's just link it. It's a lot easier.
We're already over here. I think Laura wants to stay home.
you guys want to switch the groups? Because I feel like if people are gonna assume Group A is on the left. Because if you like, you know what I mean, like A B rather than B A. Okay.
Okay, this one is further like behind the table. It's about even.
What? Were you talking to Liz?
No.
Okay. We're also going to take questions from the Zoom audience.
Okay.
So we have to mention that before we go into taking questions from.
How much time is left on the intermission?
Like
2 minutes.
3.
3 minutes. Okay.
Why? Do you need
I
the
will be
bathroom?
right back.
Go. So we can say before we take questions from the panel that people that are on the Zoom audience to submit questions, and we'll get to them after the panel discussions.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you want to write it into your
So we want
part?
to say Zoom, and then I'll just say, I'll remember that.
Yeah.
So we're going to do Zoom, and then. Where are they? Are they around? Yeah, they cut off. Okay, so we'll go Zoom audience and then regular audience, or what is-
No, it's just we need to mention it that
Okay,
they can
that
submit
they can submit
questions,
questions
and
into
then during it we're gonna do like the round robin thing, and then
we'll
say
do Zoom.
and no, then Mariana will go around with questions from the audience, and Hazel will put up her hand when we're doing questions from Zoom,
Perfect.
and she'll do like say 2 of them, more from the audience, 1 more, la la la.
Yeah, that's great. We are now coming to the close of the brief intermission, so please head back to your seats and finish preparing your questions. We'll begin our... Oh.
I'm gonna put this under the table. Okay.
You're behind me, and I'm gonna be like,
Okay, wait, I'm gonna start it. We are now coming to the close. Should I? Yeah?
Yeah.
Zoom, yeah. Yeah. Yep. We are now coming to the close of our brief intermission, so please head back to your seats and finish preparing your questions. We will begin our Q&A momentarily. Thank you so much. My name is Anna Wright, and I'm going to be one of your moderators today from Group A. We will thank you for your time and attention, and we'll begin with our Q&A team introductions and then start with a question from one of our panelists. During this time, panelists will do a round-robin system of asking questions. Please feel free to interject if something is misunderstood or a follow-up question arises. When we move on to our audience questions, we will have Mariana, our mic runner, facilitating questions from those who raise their hands. For anyone within the Zoom audience who wants to ask a question, we will have someone in person raise their hand during this part of the question, and you may submit questions via the chat. Answering questions on behalf of Group A, we have Dakota, Milo, Colby, Cyrus, and Emma. On behalf of Group B, we have Anthony, Phoebe, Avi, Jordy, and Amelia. Thank you so much. Panelists may now ask their questions.
Are we? There we go. Yep. So I think first I would want to say, based on some of the discussion I've had with the panelists, that we are super impressed with the research and solutions presented. I think we were talking about the fact that when we were freshmen in college, we were all here geeking out on sort of the because we do this for our career. You know, the depth of the research you did on this topic area, and that as freshmen in college for us was like we would never gone to the to that depth of thinking about these issues and the solutions you provided. So just wanted to start out with that. So congratulations and thank you for the great work. In terms of a question, I guess I would really, again, congratulate you on focusing on when you did your research, having to come up with those issues on your own, but then focusing in on a few of solutions that were achievable. And maybe for starting out, big picture, what made you focus in on some of the specific solutions that you identified, as opposed to maybe staying at a higher level, what I would call policy issues, and being maybe less pragmatic and less specific about the kinds of things that would affect you day to day, but maybe things that were bigger picture, or like asking your college to do some bigger picture things. So maybe just talk a little bit about, or answer the question of how you focused in on the solutions that you selected.
Avi?
So yeah, a lot of our process was really focused in on trying to find these points of under-optimization. If we were to look at like the big picture, a lot of the stuff has already gotten a lot of minds on it, a lot of work on it. Our real goal was to look for parts of the system that haven't already had a lot of this optimization, haven't already had a lot of this closer lens looked on, and to really go in on those parts of this problem and try and improve those and push on those as much as we can.
Dakota? Is the other mic?
Hello? Oh, I apologize. So, something I noticed a lot with our group is while semesters are a really long time, it's also not. And I think a common sentiment is that we really wanted to ensure that we had a tangible progress made by the end of the semester. We would love if future years, future students, either in this class or just regarding thinking about the transportation system of Lewis and Clark in general, we would love if they would be able to take the base level of data collection and research we've done and go into even larger ideas about changing and reimagining the transportation system. I think we realized that we wanted to still be able to make change in the short amount of time we had, so we focused on the very closer achievable goals that could also be a stepping stone for future larger projects.
Hello. So as a staff member here at the college and the job that I do, I don't get to interact all that much with students. And so being here and seeing all of this just inspires me even more to do my job. So I just want to say thank you for doing the amazing work you're doing, all the students. Like a lot of you weren't here when they were presenting, so everyone. Great job. Awesome. Awesome job. My question, I kind of want to back it up just even a little bit more. It felt like most of your thoughts and your solutions and your ideas were mostly focused on student transportation, right? And students moving around town from here and getting around and all of those type, which makes a lot of sense. You're thinking through your student lens. But from the different surveys and things, a lot of staff and faculty are driving and moving around. And it didn't feel like a lot of the solutions were staff faculty based, right? Was there a decision early on in the process to sort of focus on the students, because your students, you kind of know that space maybe better? Or was there thoughts of, gosh, we have all of these faculty and staff that are driving single occupancy cars. Could we tackle that? Or were there any ideas around that aspect of things?
Hello. Is it working? There we go. Okay, awesome. This mic. I think we really wanted to look at a solution that was quantifiable as a student body, and I think in order to be able to come to that conclusion, we had, especially through our student surveys and the data that we had accessible, I think a lot of the student or the information that we had access to in terms of transportation ended up falling back on the students. And I think we all chatted pretty extensively about multiple solutions that involved the exterior community, I guess, and just like the greater Portland area. And we decided that in order to create an instant change, we wanted to really narrow in on the problem in the immediate student body. So.
Kobe, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I think it's on. One thing that I would like to add is generally, like, for example, the survey that we conducted, a large, kind of a disproportionate number of the respondents were actually faculty members. So, of course, as a student body, as a student-led project, we had a number of things that we have personally experienced and noticed as issues with the transportation system that we kind of hypothesized would be some of the concerns that would come up over the Lewis and Clark population as a whole, over the community as a whole. And when we conducted that survey, we found that a lot of, the gripes and complaints that students were having and that we personally as individuals were having were relatively aligned with the issues that a lot of faculty members and staff members noticed and would like to see improved in the survey data. So generally speaking, a lot of the issues, for example, the lack of connectivity to various neighborhoods other than downtown Portland, that was an issue that a lot of students have found for trying to get off campus, but it's also an issue that a lot of faculty and staff reported as an issue because not everyone lives downtown or somewhere adjacent to downtown. So that's one example of something that there was generally agreement between faculty and students on what a solution could look like.
Avi, did you want to add something to that?
I just want to elaborate a little bit more on the perspective of Group B, because I think we had less solutions aimed towards faculty. And a lot of that for us, I think, is due to the kinds of questions and problems we were looking at. A lot of what we were looking at is on the educational and interface lens, where we're trying to improve how our customer base interacts with transportation. I think for a lot of the solutions that would more pertain to faculty, those would be less on the end of education and less on the end of information and understanding, and more on the end of grander changes to how the system functions, which was more out of our scope.
This is great conversation because I'm going to follow up on your user groups. First off, again, I'll reiterate from the panelist perspective, really, really impressive what you all have done. Again, we're all in the field as professionals, and you all are speaking our language, so really nice job. It's commendable, and what I'm excited about is there's so much opportunity to turn what you've done into something really tangible. So to your point, I think it was Dakota, you were saying it would be great if this could continue on, and I fully agree. It would be fantastic if something really tangible did come out of it. One thing that I'm recognizing is there's a lot of this survey data, and just to give a little bit of feedback just in when it's presented, this is really low-hanging fruit, but I think you can take it and go with it, is the way that it's presented. It was like cutting off some of the answer choices, and so as panelists, I will speak for myself, it was really hard to take in like a lot of information really fast. So maybe consider truncating or making some of your answer choices a subset of what your questions actually were. The other thing too is to make it easier to understand for your audience is to cut it down to just the whole numbers. You don't need to go to the hundredths for your percentages, and so that'll make it impact really strongly. So my question is, how did you come up with your survey questions, and at what point in the process? Because it's kind of like a chicken and an egg. When do you know what to ask if you don't know what the problem is? But then how do you decide how to frame it? Because I think when you frame a question, it's so important because that's going to incite your answer. So that's kind of a complex question that I'm curious to learn more about how you all tackled.
Yeah, and just thank you for the feedback, first of all. Just to split up the question a little bit for the Q&A team, we'll start with the question of how did you figure out the questions that were asked of the survey? Colby, would you like to start?
Yeah, I can answer this in part at least. I have experience interning in transportation planning agencies, and so I do have survey writing experience, and I kind of took a lot of what I learned from that time. For example, a lot of the surveys that I've worked on professionally outside of school have been things that are pertaining to an already existing project, whereas this survey was really unique because it's a very vague breadth of information that we're looking to obtain. We're just in general looking to pinpoint the largest concerns that members of the community have. So for this survey, we included a lot of open-ended questions. I know there were a lot of questions that were just kind of point blank. Where do you want to be able to go more easily using our transportation network? And people were able to write in options, and going through and just reading and cataloging what those places were. For example, we could see that there was clear favorability for certain areas over others, and just in the survey writing in general, there was an intention of trying to keep the questions as sort of big picture as possible, since it was not focused on a specific project. So that was a big part of the process there.
Dakota, are you wanting to add on to it?
I agree with a lot of what Colby said about favoring open-ended questions that gave students the opportunities to just really speak their mind rather than limiting what the question bases looked like. When it came to formation of the survey, I know we did take influence from past surveys, both done by past students and also Lewis and Clark. Differences, though, I would say, is we spent a lot of time also thinking about, and I want to bring this up, how we could get people engaged with the surveys and therefore engaged with the process of hoping to improve the transportation system as well. So I wasn't as involved personally with that aspect, but I do want to bring attention to that as a very valuable department of our team that worked on that. So, yeah.
The survey.
Hello. So I just wanted to jump in because it's more about the survey. How did you guys feel the turnout was for people responding to the survey? And what did you kind of learn maybe through that process? How to get more data? How to get more people involved? And how did you administer it? Was it an email? Was it out in the general public, handing it out and saying, fill this out? So how did you collect that survey?
Amelia, would you like to kick us off?
Question. I would say that when we were trying to turn out the survey, we did end up getting a demographic of, when looking at students specifically, mainly undergraduate students, and I believe only 2 or 3 law and graduate campus students. This was because I feel like a lot of the people who ended up answering this survey were people who we reached out to as a class, specifically like our friends or our classmates. A lot of it was by word of mouth. We did also make an attempt to put up posters around the different campuses. However, it seems like due to our lack of connections with the law and graduate campus, we did end up getting a low response rate for them, which is a little bit sad, but that is what it is.
It's on? Okay, I think so. Well, I was gonna add on to what Dakota said, which is when we conducted a survey about like if students felt they would use the like TriMet or different systems more, like if they had been implemented during NSO, New Student Orientation, and we got 50% saying that they would, and I think that opens up again, we're raising issues, and if they can be like addressed during New Student Orientation next semester, like these issues are being raised with the lack of like really knowing a lot about the transit systems or anything, kind of gathering the knowledge ourselves. And if students are finding out about that during NSO in the future, they'll be able to continue on even earlier than we did.
Did that answer all parts of your question?
More, and then also maybe just kind of just to reflect on what didn't go well and what you can do in the future to make those connections with your different levels of classmates.
Phoebe?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on something that I noticed with the parking and transportation, the official department survey that was also conducted recently, is they spent a lot of time tabling, and it was a very consistent effort. They were outside our main cafeteria that we called the Bone, constantly trying to get student attention, and they got around 1,800 responses on their survey. We got around 130, so a significant difference. So I think we were on a shortened time frame with it only being a semester class, and with having to create the survey and give it out this semester, I do think if this were to happen again, a longer time period and more persistent efforts on the undergraduate, graduate, and law campus to be, I think it takes a lot. I think sometimes it takes multiple times of people seeing a survey to go, oh, I'm going to fill that out. Sometimes one time is not enough, so that persistent presence matters.
Was Milo, did I see a hand raised? Okay, we'll go Milo and then Colby.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on our survey, we also had a majority of respondents that were specifically freshmen, just because we are a freshman class. So I think while that definitely did skew the data specifically for our survey, it was still a valuable data set to us for sure, and we were able to hold it in comparison with surveys like Helen's survey and the transportation and parking survey. And to be honest, the answers weren't that different. So I think the survey in general was still a very valuable tool to us.
Colby?
Is this okay? Just to add, another thing that I think certainly played a role in our response rate was the fact that the transportation survey, or the transportation department's official survey, obviously came directly from the transportation department. So I think students, when they were answering that survey, they certainly had more of an incentive of like, okay, this is going directly to the people that are making the decisions versus our survey. I honestly think that 130 responses, it's certainly not an insignificant number. We would have loved to have seen more, but a big reason why I think we saw that small-ish number was simply because people read the email and they're like, oh, this is going to a class that may or may not be able to implement these things. So,
bearing in mind the mindset you expressed about like hoping this project is a stepping stone to build on other projects, what recommendations would you make to future students based on what you've learned with this survey that they try with future survey and outreach efforts?
We can start with Alfie, maybe?
I wasn't personally super involved, but one instinct I would have would be to be more in your face about putting out the survey in the future. Like you were mentioning, to like go be in physical locations at a table and to like be physically there as a person trying to give a survey instead of sending it out purely digitally through emails and other digital avenues.
I would also like to.
You're loud enough.
I would also like to turn this on. I would also like to add that I think it was very important as a class to recognize that just the importance of gathering raw data, even if we thought about the skewedness. I know a lot of us have been in like statistics classes or stuff like that where we really think about the individual, just the overall impact of how useful our information could be. And during our process, that kind of slowed us down a little bit, I think, in terms of gathering responses. And so what I would recommend to a future student is just to get as much information collected as possible, and just realizing that more information is better than no information. And hopefully with outreach or just more people knowing about this transportation issue, I think just with time and gathering information on how students use public transportation, or how students how students are able to use their public transportation throughout these upcoming years, I think in terms of gathering data and stuff, that will just come naturally, and more publicization of this transportation issue, I think, will lead to more information coming naturally. I also wanted to say, well done in doing a survey and getting responses. Most public engagement and like survey processes we do professionally go on longer than a semester. So getting it done in an academic calendar is a real feat, and I was impressed with what you pulled together.
Before we move on to the next question, I think we're going to have one last round from our panelists, and then I know that we already have some Zoom questions and probably some audience questions, and so
if you could maybe wrap up your final question. We will have time afterwards to ask further questions of individuals or the team as a whole if you would like have more specific questions.
So I was going to shift us to solutions maybe a little bit, right? And ask some questions about your solutions. From the funding perspective, right? That's my world and fundraising and things. And so the question I had, it was almost shocking to me that the OtterBus app that maybe currently exists didn't do the things that sort of naturally you would think it would do. So that to me is an obvious, easy yes, right? Like, come on, let's figure that one out. However, some of my questions, so 50,000 to 100,000 cost, was that base, where was that research? Is that what it costs to make an app these days? And is that just a startup cost, or like, because there's maintenance to apps as well, right? So generally you have to kind of pay a yearly, if not, monthly type of fee to keep that app going, and paying someone to do. So I was just wondering if there was research into that aspect of it. And then, yes, there's a fundraising piece, right? Grants from different organizations, but then there's potentially also revenue piece. I mean, any app that I have throws up an ad, right, that I got to sit through and listen to. Maybe that's a possibility. I know we all hate those kinds of things, but that's how that app makes money. So then you don't have to find someone to give money for it. You can find Chrysler or whoever, to put their ad on that app, right? I also half wonder if maybe partnering with an organization, an app that already exists, right? Like a Waze, for example. Maybe Waze could get into the game of college bus app tracking, and we could be the first one that does that, right? I mean, how cool and innovative would that potentially be? And then they could then take that to other campuses and use it, but we would be the first one. Anyway, I'm very curious about that app and funding and that space.
That on? Okay. Sorry, these mics are confusing. The $50 to $100,000 was an estimate given to us by Peter Drake, the chair department head of the computer science department here at Lewis and Clark. It was an estimate he gave. I believe the Group A got a slightly different estimate of less than that from our head of transportation. So these are estimates from people we talked to on campus. We are open to a lot of different avenues of funding. We were looking at grants, and primarily because that is what our research came up with, but the idea of ad revenue on apps is a great idea, and even though it is annoying, I think all of us would much prefer a functional app and could tolerate a few little ads. So I definitely think partnerships and all of that, and I think if we were to do this in the future, we would absolutely love to have conversations with members of the Lewis and Clark staff and faculty, people like you, to talk about what opportunities there could be to make this possible.
I just wanted to add.
No, you're good. Keep the conversation going about apps. So.
All good. I just wanted to add our proposal for the app. I know that the computer science department gave us an estimate of $50,000 to $100,000. Our head of transportation, Joey Zayas, gave us an estimate of $5,000 app or $10,000 app building fees, and then $5,000 annual maintenance costs, which is roughly what the current app, what we're paying for the current app. Granted, the current app does not work at all, so that might be a little bit of a low estimate for one that functions properly. However, one of the biggest solutions, or one of the, I guess, most useful bang for your buck, if you will, solutions that I think we included was uploading the GTFS data onto Google and Apple Maps. Especially GTFS is open source. It can be uploaded for free. And it can also, there is a GTFS real-time tracking feature where Apple Maps or Google Maps might update your directions. For example, if you punch in your starting point and your destination, but the PIO is running, or sorry, the OtterBus is running late, it might inform you that you won't be able to catch the bus that you were intending to catch and that you should take a different bus instead. So that's something that doesn't even require a proprietary app. All it involves is uploading our transportation information to the open internet for websites and apps to have access to. So.
Yes, 100. I was like, you're sitting on the solution, and you mentioned the GTFS thing in your presentation. So yes, do that, and then Transit app will map that. It's a third-party thing. Like, you're sitting on the solution. As somebody who went the route to try to get a proprietary app made for a project that I worked on, it does come with a lot of unforeseen costs. So I'm not trying to quash ideas. I'm just like speaking from experience. And so I do think that you're literally sitting on a solution. And so if you can get that general transit feed specification data, boom, you've got it. It's like right there. So nice job.
I have more to add on apps. And yeah, just to also double down on like the ongoing maintenance of a proprietary app. If you think about the website having broken links, that's super easy to fix. That's like a 5-minute fix if you have access to the website. A broken thing on an app is much more complicated. So I work on a statewide program called Get There Connect, which is the link to the carpool site you guys have in your pamphlet. So I was curious if you looked into Get There Connect as a carpooling solution, and if you did, if there were reasons it did or didn't work for you all.
Before we go into the answer, I'd like to encourage any Q&A team members who haven't been able to speak up now.
So with Elsie in particular, we did actually have Get There previously, but during our research, we found that the connection specifically for Elsie students was no longer working. So we assumed that there were reasons for that it either wasn't being utilized enough, or we just ended our partnership with that app. I believe it's on the pamphlet sort of as an example, like placeholder situation for what carpool connectivity could look like. But we definitely did consider outsourcing to third-party apps. Much of our conversation with the director of transportation as well, he was talking about how our shuttle was outsourced through third-party and that sort of thing. And he seemed kind of adverse to the idea of outsourcing too much just because of cost, and also sort of like that disconnect how much control we have over it, which definitely encouraged us to lean many of our solutions to be more in-house.
That's really helpful. I will say Get There is free. So it doesn't cost anything. And we just launched a new app in February that has like improved pooling elements. Sorry to do a Get There ad during your presentation. I just think this could be a really helpful and affordable solution for what you're looking for. So there's like carpool matching, and then also if people are trying to do walk, transit, or bike pooling, so you can match with people to travel together in different modes. And then the new app also integrates Google Maps searching, so you could do carpool matching and trip planning, especially now that you are uploading that GTFS data. So it could be an app that has all the solutions you're looking for that wouldn't, Lewis and Clark wouldn't have to pay to maintain.
So my point proven in real time, this is so valuable. Getting people together in a room that are doing similar or same work, because we're going to bounce off ideas, reaffirm. So just really those partnerships that you can make are so important. I did have, it looks like the education piece was a really big part for you folks. Two sources, you said that this is where we would like to get our information from. Were there other places that you saw that students could get information from? And who do you guys feel like, if you have a question, who are you going to? Are you going to your peers? Is there somebody on campus? With that being said, at Portland Community College, we find that a lot of our front-end staff, our custodians, our cafeteria workers, they get asked a lot of questions. So how do you encourage all of your staff for being capable of giving out information regarding the shuttle? Hey, did you know that this is available to you? Really empowering as many people as possible, and having a standard information packet to have to say, this is the standard information to give out. But just other ways to make that education that are cheap, easy, solutions. So I don't know if you guys thought of anything beyond those two groups.
Yeah, Anthony?
Other ways that we haven't completely thought about, but you brought up a great idea about the staff. For example, in the cafeteria in the library, you have to walk by staff to get into that place, and they could hand out a flyer or say, scan this QR code. And that's someone that students would listen to. And also we had the idea of videos, like on the app, which was a very good idea. And students, if they're very afraid of something, they could just watch the video, like how to pull the cord on the bus.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I was going to say that I thought the videos was a brilliant idea in terms of getting over that barrier of, you mentioned, especially freshmen not wanting to make mistakes, and I get that fear. And so, and like fellow panelists, I would say that sort of ongoing maintenance operations is a barrier to some of the tools, but I think once you alight on the right solutions of the tools, and you have sort of that long-term operations maintenance addressed, that really the education and marketing is probably the most effective thing you could do on campus, and figuring out the most effective ways to educate and market is really, I think, where you can make a huge difference. And so that's why the videos to me popped out as like, yes, that's brilliant. But also there were some other ideas. The new student orientation, also a great idea, good way to get the word out there. It made me also think about towards the end of the year, when you have students who are going to transition from freshmen where you're required to be on campus to, being upperclassmen where you might be moving off campus, having some sort of, before you leave, and make your decision about where you're going to live next year, it's sort of having some sort of education about, hey, here's where the Otter bus runs, where are you thinking about living next year? Are you going to be on campus? If you're not going to be on campus, think about how you're going to get to campus when you're trying to pick the house with the lowest affordable rent that you can afford. Maybe it's affordable because you can't actually get to campus very easily, right? So getting students to think about those before they leave campus in the spring for the summer break. So my impression of all the solutions you were presenting, really focusing on that marketing, once you've got the other tools in place, focusing on that marketing and education, but then also just being creative about different ways to get there. I mean, you were off to a really good start. I really like the ideas you had, but I would keep pursuing other thoughts too about what are the ways you get your information and how can you encourage your fellow students.
Thank you so much.
There's not a question there, is there?
Thank you so much for your feedback. We really appreciate it. I think we're going to have Mariana take questions from the audience and the Zoom chat. Maybe start with Zoom, and then she'll be running around, so just raise your hand if you have a question.
Hi there, I'm Hazel. I'm also part of this class, and I've been monitoring the Zoom chat. From Ben Mose, I'm going to lead with just one question for now. We have, how would you collect data throughout a term or academic year as opposed to a specific survey? And could you see us using that type of data over a longer period of time to improve transportation?
May you repeat that a little bit more clearly, Hazel? Sorry, we can't hear you that well.
Sorry, I didn't realize it doesn't sound clear. How would you collect data throughout a term or academic year as opposed to a specific survey? And could you see us using that type of data over a longer period of time to improve transportation?
Colby?
One thing that we have considered is, for example, with our Otter bus, I believe they are technically equipped with ridership counters, which literally just count the people that enter and exit the bus through the door. However, those can be unreliable, especially because it's a free bus. Often ridership is calculated through like how many people are paying fare, whereas with the motion detector ridership counters, if someone like gets on the bus and then steps off the bus again and then gets back on the bus after they've like grabbed something off the street, then that'll count it as 2 riders, for example. But overall, there are a number of metrics, like those ridership numbers, that the PIO or the OtterBus collects. There is also information on just, for example, the number of parking passes that are being purchased in a given year. What percentage of those parking passes are carpool passes? Also looking at when we do implement carpooling solutions, how many people are downloading that app? How many people are signed up? How many groups are there that are regularly actually carpooling to school or work? So there are a number of metrics that we can look at just from a day-to-day operation standpoint that will let us know if our solutions are working or not.
All right, thank you. Does anyone else in the audience here right now have any questions? I don't want to take away from your time. All right, I'm going to continue with another Zoom question.
Have one.
Oh, wait, I'm so sorry, I didn't see you.
Hi, I'm Ann Bentley from the chemistry department, and this is a little off where your focus was, but I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are or what you heard from talking with students about barriers for them to bicycle as a commute or from campus to get around the city. Because in my time living here, I've covered the whole city by bike. It's very doable, I think. But anyway, I didn't mean to put my own opinions in. I'm just curious what you perceive the barriers to be and or ideas you may have talked about to help incentivize or encourage students cycling.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I would say bikes was one of the things we looked at initially, and then we ended up not backtracking. We ended up leaving them more to the side in comparison to other solutions. I would say for the biggest barrier for students riding bikes is the fact that we just live on like a raining hill. It can be hard, I feel like, for people to get around, especially if they don't have their own bike. However, with the revitalization of the bike co-op on campus, I could see us adding a lot of that into our pamphlets or into our NSO or education. I definitely see a lot of viability in that, and I think that it would be good for us to evaluate adding that into our solutions we currently have.
Phoebe?
Just wanted to add on that we do have a lot of as you mentioned, the bike co-op has been recently revitalized. We have a lot of very passionate students who are really interested in biking and are definitely trying to encourage their peers to get more into biking. I think there is a level of uncertainty and just a lot of students like don't have their bikes and living on a hill and the weather, they are a little nervous about it, or they are unsure about biking around Portland by themselves, especially if they haven't done it before. And I think these students who are really passionate, who have an email list that they like to send out about the group rides that they're going on, and they have, a lot of them live in the dorm that I live in, and there are so many bikes in our basement. It's crazy and it's amazing. And I think that sort of passion between student interactions, I think, will do a lot, because I think the culture around biking needs to be built up like student to student. I think coming and saying that you should bike more from an official standpoint isn't going to do quite as much as peers getting more and more excited about biking with their friends. So I hope that these students and the work that they're doing right now will have a big impact.
And then we'll move on to Colby and then Dakota.
Cycling was a big priority initially when we looked into this. If we're going to get into specifics of the barriers, was that where we're located, coming from downtown, options generally are riding along the riverfront, which then involves like a very steep ride up through the cemetery, which can be discouraging for a lot of people, with the exception, of course, of e-bikes, which are a lot more expensive and require charging. But the other big bottleneck was the corridor where Barber and I-5 run alongside the mountain. Obviously, no one is riding their bike on I-5, and very few people are willing to ride their bike on Barber, because that's just a bottleneck where there's really very few options to get through on a bicycle, and get up into, south or northwest downtown and generally other sectors of Portland. So really our main route into and out of campus is down the hill through the cemetery, over into Selwood and whatnot, which has been great going downhill, but not so much coming back up. And so the PIO route that we've proposed, we have actually considered cyclists as one of the important parts of that route. Since it's a loop, the idea was for the route to go to the Fred Meyer, up through Hillsdale, and then to Selwood, and then from Selwood it would come directly back to campus. So it would only be about a 10-minute ride if people wanted to ride their bike down and use the Springwater Trail or any of the other trails in the area, and then they could meet the bus in Selwood and just come right back up the hill. And that was another thing that we considered in possible solutions, was increasing the capacity of the bike rack to a 3-bike rack instead of a 2-bike rack. So there are certainly minor change, like bicycles were considered in our solution. However, the PIO route was our main way of addressing that. So because of, again, the hill and the geographic constraints.
Excellent. Any other questions from the audience?
Hi, I'm Hillary Martin Hyman. But did you want to answer Dakota on the biking thing first?
I could add something real quick if you don't mind.
Sure, I don't mind.
Something from my personal experience, walking around the roads around the campus, down by the river, geographically, I think I've experienced a lot of issues with kind of safety along the roads. There's a lot of lack of sidewalks or even shoulders, having to wait for for gap in cars on the highway to almost run across a section where there's no space between the guardrail and the lanes. I think even that can be discouraging. And then moving away from geographical limitations, I think just about understanding the mental space, especially of first-year students coming into college for the first time, probably coming into even a new entire region of the country, or coming from different countries, right? Navigating what this new type of school looks like, their courses, etc. They're motivated to take the both the mentally and physically easy transportation method of using cars. Cars are time efficient, they're familiar, they're easy. When it comes to using public transport that may not be familiar or biking, especially with not knowing the terrain, not knowing the roads, I think it's understandable that a lot of first-year students could be very hesitant, right, to embrace that. And I mean, ways that could be solved, we talk about just getting students out more during the best opportunity we have, which is new student orientation, emphasizing off-campus trips, organizations, even not even far away, just around the campus, getting people familiar with the terrain. I think just easing that subconscious mental burden can have a really positive effect in that regard.
Thanks. Yeah, so my name's Hillary. I'm from the Center for Spiritual Life, and I'm really curious about carpooling and the carpooling culture, and maybe our panelists can address some of this too. But I was struck by your idea of the Google Sheet and adding, hey, I'm going on this trip, and you can fill in. But do people, for the students who are carpooling, is it common to bring strangers in your car? I just was wondering about that incentivization of why people would do it, aside from, their good nature and trying to improve the world and be a more sustainable person. But I have my skeptical mind happening right now, and I don't like that voice, but I'm really curious from you all what you were hearing and what you could imagine.
Phoebe, would you like to take a job at answering that?
Yeah, that is a very good point. I do think there is naturally some hesitancy to get in a car with someone you don't know. I do think it works in our benefit that this is a rather small campus, and a lot of us do know each other, especially if we are in the same grade. I do think part of this would be to build up the system slowly and to build the trust between students. I don't think it's realistic to expect tomorrow all of a sudden students to be getting into cars with students they don't know at all, but there is already some culture of carpooling, especially among students who have shared such as extracurricular activities, classes, and they need to go places, especially if there is like upperclassmen and underclassmen in those. I think I've certainly made friends with a lot of upperclassmen, and being able to have someone who I can trust to give me a ride somewhere if I really need to, I think has been helpful. And I think those relationships are going to take time to build, and we hope that it is been like I think I mentioned with like the biking culture, just like building up with the student to student, and hopefully students can build carpool groups if they live in the same area of Portland and they realize that they are carpooling from the same area to campus on the same days, that they could carpool together. I think it's just going to take a little bit of time and work and trust to build.
The other thing is with carpooling, it's another thing that we could address on new student orientation, because right now we have a really low percent of students carpooling. I'm pretty sure it's 5%. And like, again, like we actually have like a lot of open opportunity to just educate new students on everything. Like teachers and peers, they know or probably know the transit systems. And I think with the hecticness of the first week, and again, like freshmen not wanting to do anything wrong, I think it stops like these questions from being asked. So if there was like just like some type of like curriculum or something that like needed to be like said to new students, I think it would just generally benefit like even like safety measures with carpooling, or like how to get around like carpooling with strangers, or if that's something that you would be comfortable with. I think new student orientation, finding these new people and like going through that would definitely help.
Okay, I think we're coming to an end of our time, so we're going to have one last question from the Zoom room and then make some closing remarks.
Okay, I'm just going to, so that the people in the Zoom understand why I'm doing this, there are 3 questions. I'm going to skip one because it's from, sorry, volume. I'm going to skip one because it's from the same person who asked before. So from an anonymous attendee, we have, I'd love if each member of the Q&A teams could tell us something that they learned from this unusual academic experience and or a memorable moment from this semester.
I love the length of what that's going to take. Okay, Anthony, go ahead.
It's a very interesting class. As Liz mentioned, there wasn't very much leadership, and we were all just thrown into it. And one of the most memorable moments was like on the first day of class, everyone got in. She's like, okay, just talk about a problem with transportation at our school. And after a few minutes, it went pretty much silent, and she just left us there, and it was very memorable.
Yes, I definitely think that there were a lot of moments of us having to learn how to work as a team without having this already established leadership structure. And I think we had a lot of conversations about how we want to structure our meetings. And I think that was really interesting in itself, of how we had to set up the system that we were going to use before getting to actually solving the problem itself, and being like, how do we build this structure and create a system that we can work within? It was an extra challenge.
Yeah, for me, like a big takeaway and a big thing I learned from this is just like there were a lot of times where I felt like no one was really pushing things forward. Like I remember one time where we had like an hour-long conversation about bingo for like a field trip that just took everything up. And especially as like the class went on, one thing I learned and saw a lot of other people get better at is just actively like pushing on things and saying we have to move on, we have to keep going, and like getting more persistent about that.
One thing that I
learned greatly from this class was just how important communication is. When we were trying to put this website together, coordinating between both the morning and the afternoon groups, it was an absolute nightmare not being able to just sit in with each other's classes fully and talk about it for as long as we wanted. Some of us, including myself, had class during the time that their class was happening, so it made communication incredibly difficult. I'm frankly astonished of how well the website turned out.
You kind of just touched on something that I was about to touch on, which is my favorite moment was when we started doing our cross-section coordination meetings and getting to see what the other group was working on, because it was so similar to us, but there are some key differences. There's stuff I really love about their plan. I love how we came to so many similar conclusions, and it was great getting to hear from the other section when we had been a little bit isolated before. We had some efforts of communication, but it was nice to see each other face to face and talk it out.
Mine wasn't really a specific moment, but it was just the mindset that I had going into this class. I'm a psych major and a creative writing minor, and like everybody else in here is environmental science, and like all of my friends are environmental science. And so like just being in a realm that I wasn't completely familiar with, I think really trained my brain to use the knowledge that I already had just differently and uniquely. And I really appreciated this opportunity to be able to think in new and important ways.
I'd say what was my like big takeaway was really like how like people would bounce off each other, and like how we would be having a conversation and then somebody would know like the bus like Colby would know the names of all the bus operators, and he would be able to get us like in touch with people, and this would just happen with a bunch of different people in the class all the time, and like our conversations would build off each other, and just like it would kind of like they would lead each other.
Well, in a sense, this class is kind of a dream for me because I am an absolute transit nerd. That's kind of the first thing people learn about me. So getting to come to class and talk about buses for an hour 3 times a week is a pretty cool opportunity. But one of the most fun parts of this class that I'm surprised no one really brought up earlier was our field trip. We had a block in February that was designated for a field trip that we had like 8 hours or so, or 6 hours, that it was scheduled like on the syllabus. We're having a field trip at this time. And I remember asking Liz, like, what is the plan for the field trip? What is the field trip? Where are we going? And she was like, you tell us. And so then we got to design an entire field trip for ourselves, which was really fun. I may or may not have made a transit bingo card, and may or may not have then gone to all of the places on the transit bingo card because I knew where they were because I was the one that made the bingo card. So that was fun.
I think for me, it's honestly just been fantastic being able to connect with not only my peers, but the mentors as well, and developing ideas in class that get to be shown to people who are professionals, I mean, including you guys, and being told like, oh, these are valuable ideas, like these have potential. Because I think there were moments in the class that felt extremely frustrating and extremely isolating of just like, we are talking in circles, none of this is going to be possible, there's not enough money to do this, that sort of thing. And seeing the project through and kind of finally getting to the point of wrapping it up, it's like, oh, these are fully possible solutions that can actually be implemented. And we've had a lot of great support working with many different people that kind of showed us through that.
Yeah, and I think what I'll talk about is, for me, one of the feelings I remember very, it was a very strong feeling the first few days of this class at the beginning of the semester, was just how like foreboding it seemed, how overwhelming the idea of students being able to change parts of such a large and multifaceted institution that is Lewis and Clark. It seemed like it was going to be very difficult, next to impossible. But what was so surprising for me was just how enthusiastic the faculty here were to like actually help us make these changes and help us like create our vision. I was really, I mean, we wouldn't have been able to do it without all the help we got from alumni, peers, people at like the writing center, people in the transportation section. So many people were so helpful, and I'm ever thankful for that.
I think we're gonna wrap it up because it is right on the dot of time that we have. So I'm just gonna give a quick closing remark. We're coming to the end. Oh wait, no, that's the wrong. Sorry. Thank you all very much. I truly mean it. This core class has been a lot for everyone, and I know for me personally, I have loved getting to be a part of this process and get to meet and interact and work with both sections, as I was in both sections at one point through a course change. So yeah, this marks the end of our presentation for tonight. It's been such a pleasure to have you all here with us and to share such insightful and thought-provoking ideas. We would like to extend our gratitude to our panelists, Carissa Nickerson, Ted Labeled, Sarah Goforth, Mara Paxton, and Josh Walter. Thank you all truly so much. Additionally, we'd like to thank our mentors who have guided us throughout the process, the Writing Center, Mayor specifically, and of course, the wonderful students who all came together to make this happen. And then I want to give a very special shout out to Lucas Hausman and Liz Safran, who, come on down. Without them, we truly wouldn't have been able to make this project work and to learn what it makes to create our visions possible.
So before letting you guys totally run off tonight, and just a little special note, we have some tea and coffee on the side. So after this, feel free to have a chat and mingle amongst yourselves. But we would like to take the opportunity to once again restate why this class is so important, and that is the dire need to take action for improved accessibility towards a more environmentally feasible and just transportation system. This issue is just one of many in the hard battle that is accessibility rights and environmental action. However, we would like to remind you all sitting here in the room tonight that we have the power to change this and the systems around us, and it is our responsibility to enact this change. We urge you all to sit with the information we have presented tonight, direct your questions towards us, question it, and take charge in moving this problem forward. Thank you.